Thanks, James. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending my talk. I'm a bit nervous, but I feel like I'm surrounded by friends, so that's okay. Okay, the talk is about how to work with an external music composer. And let us go. So, who's talking? It's me, Mikko Aaltio. I'm a composer for video games, film and television based in Helsinki, Finland. I was counting on my friend James introducing me because he always introduces me as a rock star, but it's not true. I'm an ex-rock star. I used to perform in a band like that. We did all right. Yeah, that's me with the saxophone. That's me crowd surfing. I had a good time until I realized this is only 2% of the time of being a rock star. 98% is this, loading the van. Yup, and then just traveling around in the van, sitting, waiting. And can you tell me if this guy looks happy? I don't know. If you compare this man, who is me, by the way, to this guy, he looks a lot happier. I'm in the studio now composing music for video games. So, what have I done before? Here are some selected projects. Currently, I'm working on a roguelike platformer, Painted Peril, by a Swedish studio called Message Photon. These are some other indie titles I've worked on. And these are some AAA titles that I've been fortunate enough to participate in as an arranger and orchestrator. Also, I've done some films, series, and even a musical. Wow. Okay. To introduce myself better, here is a clip from Dealer's Life Legend, which I've scored. Please enjoy.
Hello, my name is Mikko Aaltio, composer for Dealer's Life Legend. I wanted to show you some behind-the-scenes material from making the score for the game. Early on, I decided not to use any synths, not to use any programming, but only record myself playing various instruments. And now, without further ado, here's a clip of me playing a track from the game.
Well, enough about me. Back to the talk. So, the topic is how to work with an external composer, a project walkthrough for indie game devs. So, I will be covering these topics as well: how to get music for your game, how to find a suitable composer, stressed on suitable, how to write up a contract for the composer, how to talk to your composer. It's difficult, but not as difficult as you'd think, and also how to design music. So first up, music for your game. What options do you have as an indie game developer? Well, first one is a hot topic. You could use AI, right? I guess like there's something ethical about it. It's possible. I wouldn't recommend it. You could use catalog music, so ready-made music, so you could sync. Just go through libraries, and endless libraries of trying to find something that fits your game. Or then the preferred option, obviously, because I need my livelihood, is working with a composer, right? So what are the benefits of working with a composer compared to AI and catalog music? I would say it's interaction, right? Interaction is threefold in this regard, in my opinion. So you have talks, tracks, and tension, which means talks, you can actually talk to someone about your vision, and they could support it or maybe challenge it, see if it's like really working for your project. Tracks, meaning that you have different pieces of music that they interact with each other, so there is cohesion, right? And then tension, you could have layered music to up some tension in the action of the game, or to imply progress or change within gameplay, right? So interaction. I think this interaction is key for quality. If you miss those things, like, you're missing opportunities. That's what I feel. To better demonstrate what I mean, here's another clip from Dealer's Life Legend. This is to convey tension, so basically layered interactive music. We have a task of either accepting or declining a challenge. And after a few challenges, the tension rises. We hear the music changing, adding layers, saxophones and melodica. Also, every time the player presses either to accept or decline, we hear a musical stinger. And this is the third intensity layer with the recorder. And once the challenges are complete, you hear a stinger. There you go. Another example of layers from the same game. See how the music interacts to the mode that you're in. Either you're indoors or outdoors. Using interactive layers makes music less tedious to listen to. Like, the track can be shorter, but if it has layers, there's like, it's refreshing always. There you go. Painted Peril, title I'm currently working on. Here's an example of cohesion between tracks, right? So that all the tracks feel like they belong to the same game. They're just not random tracks plastered on top. Here we go. This is work in progress still, not finished. The melody we just heard will be heard in different places of the game. For instance, here. Played by the harp. So the mood is very different, but the melody creates cohesion between different tracks. Again, different feeling, but the clarinet playing the melody is the same as before. Again, different feel, same melody. Same, but different. All right, I'm going to skip this one. How to find a suitable composer. This is the next section. It's very important not to just take any composer, but a right composer both for your project and your team. Where to find composers? Well, you'll find us everywhere, even in places you don't want to find us, I'm sure. We're on social media, we're at events. You can also find us through word of mouth, like recommendations. People talk about composers. And listening to game scores. You can find good composers. And most likely you'll also find us in your DMs, right? Little joke there. Okay, so once you've found some composers and you've contacted them, you should make sure that they're a good fit for you. How do you do that? You can look at their show reel and credits, what they've done before. You can check out their social media presence to see how they communicate with other people. And this gives you a vague idea, right? But only through actually doing a vibe check, as James says. You should meet them. You should talk to them. You should slide a DM to their DMs, if they haven't already done that to you before. just to see how they communicate, how they feel they would work with you, and also you can ask for a pitch, meaning that they could tell you what they think of your project, and this is very important for them to actually tell you what they think, to see if there's a match, or if they would sometimes have good suggestions that you'd not have considered. This all is to establish trust, because the music might be good, the showreel might be very fancy, but they might not understand your project, or you could have two different ways to interact, so the dynamics could not be a match. So we need to establish trust. Right. So I mentioned the composer pitch. What could that mean, possibly? Once familiar with the game, the composer could provide a vision for the music style and tone for the game. Also, how music functions and how it is designed. Is it layered? Is it orchestral? Is it static? Or perhaps linear in some aspects, depending on the gameplay. And they could also do a possibly a short, max 60-second demo. This is not a given because it's a lot of work to actually make music. So you'll have to ask if they're willing to do that. Some composers prefer to have a contract before actually making any music, just to avoid making or doing work without pay. No one wants to do work without pay. So, what to write in the contract? I suggest you make a contract before starting, always, just to make everything super clear. You could include NDA if you're a big studio and you want to protect your IP. People do that. You should include time frame and deadlines, obvious. Rates and budgets, again, obvious, but rights of both parties. This is something that could be tricky if you're not familiar with music, yeah? And also penalties, termination disputes, what every contract really has. So non-disclosure agreement, we know what it is. It is made to protect the IP so that the parties cannot disclose information from the project to third parties. But I recommend having the last point there. So consider allowing the composer to hire help if needed. Sometimes deadlines are very tight and everyone wants to meet them, but sometimes life gets in the way. So it might be necessary to add this little clause there to offer some help to the composer, right? Okay, time frame and deadlines. It's good to have in writing the time frame when the composer is needed, usually later on in the project, not in the very beginning. And then also to break the deadlines into smaller milestones which are more achievable and, there won't be a rush towards the deadline. And also what to do when force majeure hits. What if there's an earthquake? What if Russia attacks? You will never know. Or what if sickness overtakes the composer? So then there should be clauses to be very clear about what happens in force majeure. Rate alternatives. I'm not going to give you exact rates because everyone has their own, right? But I've seen that the rates are defined per minute of ready music. So ready music implemented in the finished game. That could be from 250 to 500 euros per minute. But if you're looking at AAA composer, obviously it will be 4 figures, right? Depends on the composer. You could, instead of a fee per minute, you could do a flat fee for the whole project. Usually this means that the composer gets 50% upfront and 50% after delivery. And usually the composer does an offer by the estimation of how many minutes the game actually needs, and you have discussions about this, obviously. And then a fee for this third option, instead of having a flat fee or a fee per minute, you could have fee for availability for a period of time, so basically a salary. This is not usually used with indie studios, but bigger studios, A&A studios do this all the time. Also, if the budget is very small, but the collaboration looks good and the composer wants to do it and the studio wants to hire the composer, you could consider shared revenue to compensate for the composer's time, right? rights of both parties. Now we're getting into something interesting. There are syncing rights to music, meaning that you need to pay for a license that you can sync music to your game. You need to pay this with catalog music as well, right? So this is one thing, the rate for syncing the music to the game, and this is a right that needs to be given to the game developing company or team or studio. And then it should be discussed separately, syncing to promotional materials, so trailers and whatnot, what have you. It should just be mentioned in there. I think it's a given, because you need to promote your stuff. I wouldn't put a extra fee on this, because everyone wants the game to succeed, right? And time period for rights, some idiots who don't understand game industry, musicians say that, oh, you can only use my music for 2 years, but it doesn't make any sense, because games will be up forever, right? And we hope to always be improving them and selling them in perpetuity, unless you make a sequel and such. But so just make sure that the time period is in perpetuity, so in forever, basically. That's what I recommend, because otherwise it will create problems down the line. It should be mentioned in the contract. Also, using the material in sequels. If you make a sequel, maybe the composer would like an additional fee for you to be able to use the music in the sequels, or maybe they will also write some new material, but it's not a given. It should be discussed in the contract. Also, publishing the soundtrack. I do recommend publishing the soundtrack, because it's good PR for the game. If the studio does not have connections to record labels or aggregates, or doesn't really know how to go about publishing it, maybe it's a good idea to give the permission for the composer to publish it, because they usually know what to do, right? Have it in the contract. Then legal stuff, just penalties usually tied to breaking NDA, delivering late or not delivering. We don't want anyone to deliver late or have issues, but we need to cover our backs. Termination clauses when things are not going smoothly, maybe with deadlines, maybe with communication. I don't know. You can decide. And also which court handles disputes and which country's law is applied. Now, communicating with the composer. I've had instances when I've been approached by a studio, or I've approached a studio that they feel somewhat intimidated about music, because they're not musicians themselves and they have a low self-esteem when it comes to music. But communicating with us, composers or musicians, doesn't mean that you need to be communicating in musical terms, but we can try to find a common language. I suggest that you fear not, and you talk game, not music, because the game composers are usually gamers as well. They understand games to a degree. They're not coders. So use gaming terms instead of music terms. But if you are musical, please feel free to use musical terms if you're familiar with them. That might help. But talk story. What is the story? Mechanics, game design, player experience. You know these things. Well, you talk about them within the team anyway. And the composer will translate this conversation into music, so you don't have to say that, oh, we need a symphony orchestra with double reeds and double winds and a big brass section. No, we don't need to say that. Just tell them what the game should feel like, right? And then, when you've had the legal stuff out of the way and you have enough confidence to actually talk to a composer about musical stuff in gaming terms, I suggest you get started with the composer by finding out what you want. And this doesn't mean that you know the instrumentation or that you know the exact vibe or that you have it all figured out. No. But just have an idea of that you've given it some thought, what the music could be, what the music could do in your game. Because if you don't know what you want, there's going to be a huge amount of time wasted by the composer doing stuff that you don't want or need, or that the project doesn't need. So try to figure out what you want firsthand, and then give a brief, preferably written, just to give an idea for the composer what they should start out with, a starting point. And use reference games and/or music, or if you don't have any, you can ask the composer to come up with a reference playlist just to have a starting point again. So you don't need to know everything, but you need to have the discussion. And ask a short demos first, like roughly 30 seconds to get the mood right. And if the mood is right, then it can be expanded to as long as needed. But usually in 30 seconds, you can tell if the sound is right. Right? And let the composer do their thing, obviously. Then about reference music. It's a huge time saver. If you don't have it, please let the composer do a reference playlist, because, again, shooting in the dark, it's very ineffective. Maybe have some idea of what the direction could be. A starting point, a conversation starter. It can be music you think it would fit the project. And it can be just like more is more. The larger the reference playlist is, the easier it is for the composer to get started. And you could give briefs like, ooh, I like this epicness in this soundtrack and the cuteness in the other. Can we make a combination of that? Yeah, and instead of actual tracks, it can also just be a concept, like combine funk and fantasy to make fantasy. Yeah, this was an actual brief that I was given. And it was Dealer's Life Legend, and I approached it so that I thought that fantasy could be like, instruments like that have been used for a long time, so acoustic instruments, folk instruments, combined with funk, so basically Afro-American music, maybe blues, funk, jazz, whatever. So this is what I came up with. So it's basically the classic funk band, The Meters, played acoustically, right? Well, that's what I thought. The team loved it, so we went with it. Right, so it doesn't have to be a specific track, but it can be just a concept, right? They didn't listen to The Meters, but I did, so I offered it. There we go. Okay. Efficient communication. I will give now some examples of difficult notes to implement for the composer. So the composer has done a track for you, the 30 seconds, and you're listening to it. And then, something pops in your mind, some feedback. And I will now give some examples of feedback that I've received that was not very helpful, but I pulled through somehow with asking a lot of questions after receiving the feedback, but saying something like, I don't know what I want, I just know what I don't like. I'm sure artists know this as well. It is difficult to actually start from here. Or just do what you feel like. Yes, we can, but is it shooting in the dark? Yes, it is. Is it risky? Yes. Will it pay off sometimes? Yes, it will. Most of the time, it won't. And this is my favorite. The music should be more blue. James, do you know what that means? Sports. Oh, Smurfs. It didn't occur to me. Maybe that was what they were looking for. I don't know what it means, so I needed to keep a lot. Oh, the blue compressor, right? Yeah, you have to use the blue compressor, the 1176. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, okay. No, thank you, Thor, for the input. So I also had this. I don't like the violin, which is fine. I could have just taken the violin out, but there was no violin on the track. So I was at a loss. Again, we needed to have some discussions. What does this feedback mean to take out the non-existing violin? All right. Some easy notes that I've had that have been easier to implement. Could we make this track more epic? Like, it's not obvious what to do, but there's at least something. There's the epic word that I can latch onto, unlike the word blue. I don't know what that means. Epic, I have some idea, right? Or the instrument at 032 is annoying. Can we try a different instrument or change the melody? We have something like concrete. The time code really helps. Because if they just say, I don't like the instrument that does the and it's hard. So giving the time code, it makes things easier to communicate with. Okay, that's efficient communication. Next up, designing music, right? This is a collaborative effort, obviously. So what is music designing? We can do some music, all right, but we can also do different music for different functions. Things to consider when designing music. Genre of the game. Like, is it a high-paced shooter? Is it a cozy game? Like, this affects the music design. Will it be like layered sevenfold? Will it be layered only once? Like, you know, the genre will tell us. What's the core game loop? Is it very repetitive? And is it just that you're looking at the same screen all the time, like a deck builder game? Then, you know, maybe the music needs to be very long, not to be tedious. Or maybe it's a timed match. It's always 3 minutes a match. Then it could be a linear piece of music, and then you can actually time it, do things with the time code in the music, right? What kind of player experience we want to create? Induce anxiety, maybe relax the player. And the anticipated time that we think the player will spend in different phases. This affects the length, obviously. Because if you ask the composer to write a 50-minute score compared to 25, you know, the price is different, right? So we need to be smart about it. So linear versus looping, explanatory. Either you play a track, start to finish, stop, or then you loop it. Usually you loop it, but there are instances where linear music is called for. Also, levels of activity and intensity. If there's a lot of change in gameplay, this could be done with layers, right? So, some approaches, linear music. If you have cut scenes, matches with time limit, like Clash Royale, for instance, 3 minutes always, unless you win before the time runs out, so forth. You could do playlists. Playlists means that you'll have a track playing linearly from start to finish, and then you have a small gap, silence, and then another track begins. Some very repetitive games like Star Realms use this because you're only looking at the same screen all the time, so the music changes, not to be very tedious. You could use the radio, you know, GTA uses the radio, Cats and Soup, so it's basically just playlists, but you can turn it off if you'd like and change the track whenever. Static music, so meaning that there are no layers. Like if it's simple, maybe it doesn't need layers. Or layered music, or musical stingers just to accentuate something musically. Right. I've been very fast with this. It seems like we have a lot of time for questions. So I hope you have questions. But here's the conclusions. The first section was get music for your game. Please use Composer for interactivity. So you can have someone to talk to and, you know, spar your ideas and visions so that the tracks like communicate with each other. So the pieces of music feel like they belong to the same game, right? And also you can have the option to have interactive music, so layers that imply progress and change. Vibe check for trust, finding a suitable composer. Trust is key. If you can't trust them, like you can't work with them. Safety first, like cover your ass and cover your friend's ass, right? Talk to your composer. So vision, you need to have a vision for the music. If you don't have it, talk to the composer and you'll come up with the vision together, right? But without vision, you can't do anything. References help to communicate the vision. Designing music, it increases production value when you actually give it a thought how the music functions in the game. Right. And in the end, like if you do these things, you get profit and you get stonks. Wow. Okay, that was my talk. Thank you very much. Here are my contact details. And now we have time for questions.
Thank you for a great talk.
Cheers.
I guess you know about AI, and I guess you know about Sumo?
Suno, yes.
Suno. Would you be insulted if I sent you a Sono and said, could you make this authentic? As in, using real instrument and using real voices?
So do you mean that you would produce a track in AI and then ask a composer to redo it, like replicate it?
Correct.
But with higher quality? And you ask, would I be insulted?
Yes.
Yes, I would. but to actually to elaborate on that and expand on that, I've tried Suno because I need to know what I'm up against, and I think it's perfect for creating generic pop music. It's absolutely marvelous. It's very high quality. What it doesn't understand is film and game music. If I
view on how technically involved the composer should be into the maybe game engine or like implementing their music themselves, or what's your view on that?
It's a good question. I think, well, obviously it depends on the team and what the coders prefer, what the team prefers, if they're using middleware or not, or if they're just putting it in engine directly. I would like the composer to be interested and involved, but to what extent they should actually be implementing stuff, I don't know. Depends on the team. But they should design the music together with the team and like be interested in the implementation. Are you a composer? Yeah, don't worry. Just be interested and ask a lot of questions. You'll be fine.
Sorry for taking more time. I am actually interested in like being a technical composer since I find like creative purposes for like being the implementer myself. So yeah, that's why I asked. Yeah.
Okay, we could have a talk later. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for a great talk.
Cheers.
You zoned in a bit on communication and things you find hard, feedback you find hard to work with, feedback you find easy to work with. I've been on the other side as well, where people find it very hard to formulate good feedback. So one big hint you gave us already is try to be specific, so the composer don't have to stab in the dark. But maybe could you elaborate a bit more on other things they could think about? Maybe go back to the source reference materials that you have, or are there other tricks people can use to come up with good feedback?
So you mean that you're given feedback that is ambiguous or hard to understand, and how to go about actually getting good feedback?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people wanting to give feedback but struggling to actually formulate good feedback for composers.
Yeah. It's a good question. Well, obviously, the responsibility lies with both parties, the one giving the feedback and the one receiving it. If the party receiving the feedback doesn't understand the feedback, they should ask questions and not just go do something, but rather, try to dig deeper. I'm not an expert, so I wouldn't know, but as a composer, I always try to ask a lot of questions. Even when things seem very obvious, I still ask a lot of questions, just to see that I've really understood everything. And then I usually have a reference to double check. And then I do the short demos and iterations and yeah. But usually the first thing you do, it won't be accepted. Nor the second, nor the third. You need to iterate and iterate. And you find the right path at some point. Thank you for the good question. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for your insights. We work in a very small team of about 6 people. And so with all you need programmers, you need artists. Audio always has been a bit of an afterthought. And besides programming, I do most of the audio, the music and the sounds. But as programming, there's also always enough work. How would you navigate being not only the person who does the audio, but also like the main advocate? Because if I wouldn't advocate for adding music to the game, there might not even be any music made. Now I usually do that in my spare time a little bit. How would you, on maybe a contract side, how would you both advocate for like more and better music, and also combining that with the personal stake you have in that?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I understand the question. So are you asking if you wear multiple hats?
Yeah.
How do you advocate for one hat rather than the other? Or what's the question?
No, how would you get like maybe a contract drafted if your like main job is being a programmer, but you also would like, for example,
to make music.
To use hours outside of the main job to write better music.
Okay, I get it. If you have your contract being a programmer, do you need another for being a composer? Preferably yes, necessarily not. Like if you're all friends and you're in good terms and like you bring up the idea that, I would like to make music on my spare time to this game, I'm sure they'd be open for it. If you want to somehow manage your time and cover your ass, then maybe do the contract, but it might not be necessary. It's up to you, really. Yeah, depends on how formal things get, right? And how much time do you want to dedicate? 'Cause if there's no contract, you don't have any obligations, right? If there's a contract, you do have obligations. Yeah, and if you're doing it on your spare time, it's not really work, is it? So do you need a contract? A lot of questions there, right? Yeah. I hope this helps somehow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations for your talk.
Cheers.
Would you have any recommendations about what tools we could use for building music in the case when we don't have all the instruments?
Sorry, tools for
building the music up. For example, I sometimes use GarageBand. So would you know any other tools or softwares like that?
Good question. There are tons of tools, and you can break the bank threefold. Getting them all, do you need them? No. You're using GarageBand, I think you have all you need. What I suggest you do, if you don't have a big budget, if you do have a big budget, buy them all, obviously. If you don't, learn to use the tools that you have. That is the greatest advice I can give you. If you're interested in orchestral libraries, maybe, if you're looking into that sort of music, I would recommend Cinematic Studio series. If you're looking into hip-hop things, I can't recommend you anything because I don't do hip-hop. So it's very genre dependent. Yeah, but internet's full of resources. Just go out there and search what you want.
Perfect, thanks.
Cheers. Learn your tools, important.
All right, any more questions over here? The mighty Thor.
Yes, I'm getting nervous.
Don't worry. But first of all, great talk.
Cheers.
Thank you for that. And I have one thing I wanted to add to your question. Like the question you had there is actually a question for a lawyer, not a composer.
It's true.
And what you said is right, but there's another point in it. If you're doing the music, the game is getting released, and there is certain things on the law side, who owns the IP of that music, you should cover your ass with a contract that you supplied the music and that you're the actual IP owner of that music, and you give the license rights to the studio to use it. That's actually important. I would look into that. It's not complicated with lawyers and stuff. They are fully versed in that, but I always would advise doing that.
Very good point. Thank you, Thor. Because it's one hand is syncing and one thing is making the music, and another is syncing it to something. Because the music can have a life of its own outside the game, and you want to retain these rights. So, very good point. Yeah. Thank you, Thor.
Now to my actual question.
Okay.
Yeah. So, if you are communicating with your clients, right, and it's everyone making music here knows that pain point when communicating with clients. And it's like about the terminology of things.
Yeah.
So the clients say like, oh, I want a dynamic, epic, fast track. Oh, that means something completely different to you than to me, right? And to the client. How do you go about syncing with the client to the correct terminology of language about talking about the same things in terms of syncing, basically? What are we talking about? How do you approach that?
It's a good question. There's a balance that needs to be struck between being an educator and being a collaborator. We don't want to be too much of either, right? So we don't want to be like, ooh, actually, the right terminology is this. Yeah. But rather, I always, if they use music terminology, I still say, okay, I get it. Story-wise, do you mean this? And mechanic-wise, do you mean this? So I always direct it back to the terminology that we both can agree on what it means. Yeah, but you know, sad means a lot of things, and you can convey sadness in a plethora of ways. But as a composer, you usually have an idea of what sadness means to you, and you will express that. And you know, this is the trust factor that goes into the thing as well. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, what I additionally meant with that is basically a lot of the other side, the studio you're communicating with, they often don't really know anything about audio and how to communicate their points in that terminology they want to communicate. So they use like really generic terms, right?
Yes.
So, for example, my approach is like to layer that with examples. I should say examples. What do you mean with fast? What do you mean with, right?
Yes.
That's what I was. Do you have like your own approach? Like how do you attack that basically to have that sync?
Yes. So it's basically I change the topic to the things that we actually need to talk about. So the game. I don't discuss dynamics I don't discuss orchestration unless they specifically want to do that. But if they say, oh, we could try something different with the orchestration, and I'm like, why? And try to dig deeper.
Because sometimes they throw in words, they don't know what they mean.
Yes, exactly. So we want to use words that we both understand the same way.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the talk.
Kiitos.
Kiitos. I wanted to ask, can you name one work experience where you learned the most, and what did you learn?
I would say it's the Dealer's Life Legend that we just saw, because I wanted, the gameplay is rather repetitive and static, so I wanted the music to be very like lively. So I chose to record everything myself. I don't usually record everything myself. I record bits and parts. So I learned there's a lot of editing. There's a lot of tuning that goes into it. And I tried to do all the demos with recordings as well. Bad idea. I very quickly changed to using samples and coding to do the demos. And once they were accepted, I then only did the actual recordings. So like trying... Lessons I've learned, most important lessons are like what actually matters at which stage of production. So there's pre-production, production, and post-production and such. So it would have to be that pertaining to my own workflow. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Any more questions? We have one over here.
Have you ever cancelled a project, and what reason was there for it?
Good question. I have started out. I have composed some music and material for the project. It wasn't a game actually. It was something else. And then very quickly it became apparent that they wanted something that I could not provide. So they had not checked who I am. I was just the first person who they knew was a composer. And I was not a good fit. I was not suitable, and it became apparent only after I started. So, yeah, admitting that was hard because, I want to succeed, and I don't want to have the reputation of, turning down a project after I've started it. But there was no other option, really. Good question. Thank you.
Thank you. You're brave.
Thank you. Believe my time's up.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mikko. Please follow Mikko's socials, and also you can catch up with him here at the conference.
Thank you.